You know, we talk about this a lot on the program. That is energy in America. The Trump administration changing the direction of American energy policy. It's incredibly important. Listen, I'm old enough to remember sitting in the car with my mother during the Arab oil embargo, waiting for gasoline. Yes, I'm old enough for that. I never thought I would see the day where America wasn't just energy independent, but energy dominant, which is far better, by the way. Joining me now is Trisha Curtis, a macroeconomist with expertise in U.S. shale markets, geopolitics, and China. She is CEO of PetroNerds and the host of the PetroNerds podcast. Yes, apparently by definition, she is a petro nerd. Trisha, happy to have you on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Let's talk about this. You wrote a great op-ed about winning against China means winning on energy, and winning against China on all sorts of places is important for America right now. Look, you've got Chris Wright, who I think is doing a great job, doesn't get a lot of press, doesn't need it. He is the energy secretary under Donald Trump. We've got LNG gas lines going in Alaska. We've got more oil production than we've ever had. But energy dominance is the key to our national security. That's my take, but tell me from your nerd perspective, am I right or wrong?
Yeah, it really is. It's not just dominance. It's understanding what energy you have and being able to use it. And we are the largest oil and gas producer in the entire world by a very large margin. So we produce 13.64 million barrels per day of oil, and we produce about 130 billion cubic feet per day of gas. So we have to use that, and we have to use it appropriately. And the great thing about Chris Wright is he actually understands that because he's the first U.S. energy secretary to ever have energy experience. So he actually understands what we have and how to utilize it. And importantly, you can see this coal behind me. Coal, while we don't use a lot of it and we really demonize it, we liken it to cigarettes, the reality is that coal is extremely energy secure, and we have more coal in this nation than any nation on earth. So in terms of energy security, in terms of having low utility bills, we shouldn't be having these problems that we have because we have more energy than anyone in the world.
That's exactly right. West Virginia, Kentucky, Wyoming, you can find great coal all over this country. It's energy dense. And compared to like windmills and solar panels, it's not even a foot race, is it?
No, it's not. And it's not just energy dense, it's power dense. And so when you think about like the actual power density and the energy density matters, right? Coal and natural gas we use for electricity because it's super dispatchable. You can put it in a power plant and then you can dispatch the energy. Wind and solar is not. And so there's a lot of problems with wind and solar, partly because they're made in China, which is a big problem, and they're made from coal-fired power generation, and they're made with forced labor. But also, when you put them into the grid, then they drive electricity costs up because they are intermittent. I mean, they only work when the wind's blowing. They only work when the sun is shining. And the important thing with that is that it really raises costs to the consumers and your electricity bills. And it's really important to talk about that because everybody's talking about AI and everybody's talking about demand for power and rising electricity costs. But those electricity costs went up under the Biden administration. We basically had flat electricity prices for a decade at 13 cents a kilowatt hour. And now under Biden administration in 2020 to 2025, we went from 13 cents a kilowatt hour to 19 cents a kilowatt hour on average, and much, much higher in major cities like Denver, where I'm at, and on the East and West Coast.
Yeah, and here's how bad it is. In the governor's race in New Jersey, the Democrat there, Mikey Sherrill, says if she's elected, she's going to freeze electricity costs. We only got there because of bad policy. We wouldn't need to freeze electricity costs if we didn't get there with terrible policies. I mean, you mentioned China, right? They're producing at least one new coal-fired power plant a week, sometimes more, not just in China, but all over the world. Many of those in China are not even being put into their grid. They're just being put there for future reference. That's a fact. The biggest coal mine in the world, folks, is in Mongolia. They run giant Mack trucks to the Chinese border 24 hours a day. It's remarkable what they do to fuel. And that's not good coal. The coal we have in the place, like I mentioned, West Virginia, Kentucky, Wyoming, much better product, isn't it?
It is. But I mean, you have the two largest surface coal mines in the world in Wyoming, right outside of Gillette, Wyoming. So we have more coal in this nation than China does. But China is powered on coal. So to put it in perspective, and in that article, China has over 10,000 terawatt hours of coal-fired, or 10,000 terawatt hours of power generation. So they have 1/3 of the world's power generation. That's really serious and important to really think about. But over 5,800 terawatt hours of that 10,000 is coming from coal alone. So not just that, hey, it's coming from coal and you got lots of people who are concerned about CO2 emissions, which is really a non-issue at this point. It matters that it's a super energy dense form of energy that they have, right? They dig it up out of the ground. Yes, they get it from Mongolia. Yes, they get it from China. So they have a lot of coal mining in China, but they're relatively energy secure for coal, and the vast majority of their grid is powered by coal-fired power generation. And then they use it also for cheap process heat, and they have coal plants that go right next to a factory, for instance, say in the province of Xinjiang.
Sure.
So the reality is that they're very energy secure in coal, and because it's a rock, and as much as I love natural gas, you have to compress it, you have to build infrastructure, and you have to put it in a pipeline, and you don't have to do that with coal. So it makes it's much more easily transportable.
Yeah, we should be using more of it. But bad policies, they seem to feed on themselves. North of the border, I just saw Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, still pushing for net zero. I mean, does he want the Western world to go dark? Does he want the Western world to pay $1,000 a month for electricity, $2,000 a month? It's pursuing insanity, is it not?
It's really naive and poor policymaking. So I think we have to be honest with folks that, when we're talking about CO2 emissions or decarbonization or what all this net zero is about, it's all greenwashing and it's all hand waving and just saying, hey, I'm doing a great job. But it's not doing anything. And so I live in a world, a real world, where there's geopolitical realities and that China is a major competitor. And so when you say decarbonization or net zero is at the forefront of my policymaking, you're basically saying I'm okay, giving China all my manufacturing horsepower. I'm okay getting cheap products from them, and I'm okay being completely dependent on them. And that is why China has 10,000 terawatt hours of power, and that is why they're driven by coal, is because they're making the stuff that we buy. And so we have to realize that we have got to start flexing our muscles again. And every time we decommission a coal-fired power plant in the U.S., we're only relegating that manufacturing to China. And super importantly, it's that you have to basically just stop decommissioning the coal in order to stem the bleeding of these rising electricity prices. Add in the natural gas, increase that, stop decommissioning very, very cheap, very reliable coal-fired power generation, and bring in the natural gas. And you got to bring those two together, because that very, very cheap natural gas only works when you have that coal to kind of shave off those price spikes when we do get them.
Yeah, I was in Kentucky just a few years ago, and we were looking at this coal-fired power plant not running, and I asked the guys, well, why is that not running? Oh, they're bulldozing it. I said, oh, was it too old? He goes, no, it had 30, 40 years left in it. But that was the plan, and that was in Kentucky. Strange. I've only got about a minute here, but I want to ask you about one headline here, because you mentioned natural gas a number of times. The headline, the U.S. LNG boom could make energy more expensive for Americans. More fear-mongering or true?
No, it is fear-mongering. It absolutely is. And I think there's a deep lack of understanding about traditional fuels. I call them traditional fuels: coal, oil, natural gas. There's a deep lack of understanding of all of those in the market, in the stock market. And so when we hear these headlines of, what's this fear around LNG, we produce about 130 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas, of gross withdrawals. So that's more than double the next largest producer, which is Russia. And we have more than enough natural gas in the U.S. to power our grid, to export, to power lots of other folks' grids. And so right now at $3.40, we're an okay price for natural gas, but you need a nice price signal to send to the market, and you have to have, importantly, the infrastructure to move it. But in terms of, do we have the natural gas in the U.S. and can we produce it? Absolutely. And so when you answer that question and you solve for the pricing, and then you say, okay, well, can we export more, and can we solve the world's problems? Absolutely, we can. So this price spike that you're hearing, that we're going to export LNG and then we're going to have a price spike,
yeah,
it is fear-mongering.
I got to leave it there. Tricia, I got to leave
Okay.
it there because we're up against it. But, man, you have been an education. You have. You can find out more at PetroNerds. It's the podcast. And I want to have you back anytime you want to come back, because we need to educate people about the truth about energy in America. Trisha Curtis, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Greatly appreciate it. PetroNerds, check it out. I'll be right back.